The Hammond family's SUV cruised along Colorado's Highway 24, packed with their belongings for their upcoming move to Denver. In the back seat, their beagle Nabu watched the mountain scenery through the window, his collar jingling softly with each turn of the winding road. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement as patches of fresh snow glistened on the distant peaks. Tom Hammond adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, navigating the rural highway's sharp bends. Jennifer, his wife, checked the map on her phone, confirming their route to their new home. The October air was crisp, and patches of black ice dotted the road, a common hazard in these mountain passes. Their teenage children, Emma and Jack, dozed in the back seat beside Nabu, exhausted from the early morning departure. As their vehicle rounded a particularly sharp bend, an oncoming delivery truck suddenly appeared, its tires losing grip on a patch of ice. The truck slid across the center line, forcing Tom to swerve sharply. The SUV's tires lost traction, sending the vehicle spinning toward the guardrail. The screech of metal filled the air as their car crashed through the barrier, rolling down the steep embankment. The impact shattered windows and crushed metal, leaving the Hammond family dazed and injured. Emergency responders arrived quickly, their sirens echoing through the mountain valley. As paramedics worked to extract the family from the wreckage, Jennifer suddenly realized Nabu was missing. The back window had completely shattered during the crash, leaving a gaping hole where their beloved beagle had been sitting moments before. Despite their injuries, the Hammonds begged the emergency crews to search for Nabu. Police officers and firefighters scanned the immediate area with flashlights, calling out for the dog, but found no trace. The growing darkness and the rugged terrain made a thorough search impossible that night. At the hospital, as doctors treated their cuts and bruises, the family's thoughts kept returning to their missing pet. The following morning, Tom and Jennifer returned to the crash site, their bodies still sore from the accident. They walked miles along the highway, their voices growing hoarse from calling Nabu's name. The sound of passing trucks and the whisper of wind through the pine trees were their only responses. They searched the dense underbrush, climbed down rocky slopes, and checked every possible hiding place they could find. Emma and Jack joined the search as soon as they were released from the hospital. The family spent every available moment combing the area, expanding their search radius each day. They left pieces of their clothing and Nabu's favorite blanket at various spots, hoping his keen sense of smell would lead him back to them. Local police officers kept an eye out during their patrols, but no one reported seeing the missing beagle. Days turned into weeks as the Hammonds continued their search. They plastered the nearby towns with bright yellow flyers featuring Nabu's photo, visited every animal shelter within 50 miles, and even hired a professional pet tracker. The tracker followed several promising leads through the wilderness, but each trail eventually went cold. The family posted daily updates on social media, reaching out to local community groups and animal rescue organizations. Local veterinary clinics kept Nabu's information on file. The Hammonds checked online lost pet forums daily, hoping for any news of their missing family member. They drove back to the crash site every weekend, spending hours calling for him and leaving familiar scented items, hoping to draw him back. But as winter approached and temperatures dropped, they were forced to accept the heartbreaking possibility that they might never see their beloved beagle again. Unknown to the Hammond family, Nabu had survived the crash. The impact had thrown him clear of the vehicle, and in his panic, he had run deep into the forest. For several days, he wandered through the wilderness, disoriented and afraid, his instincts keeping him alive as he navigated the unfamiliar terrain. He found water in mountain streams and sought shelter beneath fallen trees, his domestic life giving way to primitive survival skills. Then something remarkable happened. Just days after the Hammonds had given up their initial search, Nabu found his way back to the crash site. His keen sense of smell led him to the exact spot where the guardrail remained twisted and broken. There, on the shoulder of Highway 24, he began what would become his daily vigil. Each morning, as the sun rose over the mountains, Nabu would take his position near the damaged guardrail. His eyes remained fixed on the road, carefully watching every passing vehicle. From sunrise to sunset, he maintained his post, moving only when necessary to find food or shelter from severe weather. His determination seemed to grow stronger with each passing day, as if he somehow knew this spot held the key to reuniting with his family. As winter settled in, Nabu adapted to his new life in the wilderness. He learned to seek shelter beneath thick pine branches during heavy snowstorms, and discovered a small hollow under an old oak tree that offered protection from the bitter mountain winds. His survival instincts sharpened as he learned to catch field mice and find discarded food near local restaurants. The harsh mountain environment forced him to become resourceful, developing skills his pampered life had never required. The Colorado winter proved particularly challenging. Temperatures regularly dropped below freezing, and snowstorms blanketed the region in thick white drifts. Nabu learned to dig through snow to find food, and his coat grew thicker to combat the cold. During the worst storms, he would retreat to his hollow, emerging only when the weather cleared to resume his watchful position by the road. The harsh weather took its toll on the once pampered family pet. His coat grew thicker to combat the cold, while his previously shiny fur became duller from exposure to the elements. His collar, once bright and new, faded under the constant sunshine and snow. Yet despite these changes, Nabu's determination never wavered. Every single day, he maintained his watch over the highway. Through spring downpours and summer heat waves, Nabu's dedication remained unshaken. He developed a careful routine, timing his brief food and water searches during the quietest traffic periods. He became adept at avoiding the occasional animal control officers who would come investigating reports of a stray beagle. His instincts told him to keep his distance from humans, even those who meant well. The changing seasons brought new challenges. Spring rains turned the ground muddy and treacherous, while summer brought scorching heat and the threat of wildfires. Nabu learned to find shade during the hottest parts of the day and higher ground during heavy rains. Through it all, he never strayed far from his chosen post, always returning to his vigil by the damaged guardrail. As months passed, regular commuters began noticing the small, determined dog by the roadside. At first, they assumed he was just another lost pet, but as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, they realized there was something different about this particular beagle. He wasn't simply wandering or searching for food. He was waiting, watching, maintaining his silent vigil day after day. Nabu waited patiently, believing his family would come back. Would your dog do the same? Leave a comment if you've ever witnessed this kind of loyalty. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories of courage and devotion. The locals started paying more attention to the mysterious dog's behavior. They noticed how he would perk up at the sound of each approaching vehicle, his eyes carefully tracking every car that passed. They observed his unwavering focus, the way he would return to the exact same spot each day, regardless of weather conditions. Some began to wonder about the story behind this dedicated animal, whose presence had become a constant fixture along their daily commute. Early morning drivers would spot him emerging from his makeshift shelter, shaking off the morning dew or fresh snow, taking up his position for another day of watching and waiting. Evening commuters would see him still there, his silhouette visible against the setting sun, maintaining his vigil until darkness fell. His dedication was becoming a topic of conversation among local residents who couldn't help but be moved by the small dog's unwavering presence. As winter approached again, Linda Martinez, a local diner waitress, couldn't shake the image of the loyal beagle from her mind. Every morning on her way to work, she'd see him sitting by the roadside, his eyes fixed on passing cars. One chilly November day, she decided to snap a quick photo of the dog and post it on her social media. "Anyone know this pup?" she wrote. "He's been at the same spot on Highway 24 for months. Rain or shine, he's always there, watching the cars go by. It's breaking my heart." Linda's post quickly caught the attention of her friends and neighbors. Comments poured in, with many locals sharing their own sightings of the mysterious beagle. Some speculated about his origins, while others expressed concern for his well-being as the Colorado winter loomed. Bob, a long-haul trucker who regularly passed through the area, chimed in, "I've been seeing that little guy for months now, always in the same spot, like he's waiting for someone. It's the darndest thing." As more people shared their encounters, the story of the Highway 24 guardian began to spread beyond the local community. Animal lovers from neighboring towns started to take notice, sharing Linda's post and adding their own thoughts and concerns. Sarah Johnson, a retired schoolteacher living nearby, decided to take action. She created a dedicated Facebook page called The Loyal Beagle of Highway 24, where she encouraged people to share photos and information about the dog. The page quickly gained followers, with people from across Colorado and beyond becoming invested in the mysterious canine story. As December arrived, bringing with it the first heavy snows of the season, concern for the beagle's safety grew. The Facebook page buzzed with activity as locals reported their daily sightings, reassuring worried followers that the dog was still holding his vigil despite the harsh weather. On December 15th, just 10 days before Christmas, Sarah Johnson posted a particularly poignant photo. It showed the beagle, his fur dusted with snow, sitting stoically by the roadside as holiday traffic whizzed by. In her caption, she wrote, "As we all rush around preparing for the holidays, this little guy remains at his post. What loyalty, what devotion he shows. Whoever he's waiting for, I hope they find him soon. Every dog deserves to be home for Christmas." The post struck a chord with viewers. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, spreading far beyond the local community. People from across the country were now commenting, many offering to help or adopt the dog if his owner couldn't be found. The story caught the attention of local news stations. A reporter from a Denver TV channel made the trip to Highway 24 to film a segment about the loyal beagle. The resulting news story, which aired on the evening of December 18th, brought the dog's tale to an even wider audience. Among those who saw the news report was Emily Thompson, a college student visiting her grandmother in Denver for the holidays. As she watched the footage of the small beagle by the roadside, something clicked in her mind. The dog looked remarkably similar to the beloved pet her distant cousins, the Hammonds, had lost in a car accident. Emily's heart raced as she pulled out her phone and began scrolling through old family photos. There, in a group shot from last year's family reunion, she saw it, the same beagle, sitting happily at the feet of her cousins. Without hesitation, she dialed her aunt's number. "Aunt Jennifer," she said breathlessly when the call connected, "I think I've found Nabu." Jennifer Hammond, still grieving the loss of their family pet, listened in shock as Emily explained what she'd seen on the news. Could it really be possible, after all this time? With trembling hands, Jennifer opened her laptop and found the Facebook page dedicated to the Highway 24 beagle. As she scrolled through the photos, tears began to stream down her face. There was no doubt in her mind. This was Nabu. She called for her husband, Tom, who rushed to her side. Together, they pored over the images, scarcely daring to believe their eyes. Their children, Emma and Jack, crowded around the screen, their excitement growing with each new photo they saw. Tom wasted no time in contacting Sarah Johnson through the Facebook page. His message, sent late on the night of December 18th, was filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. "We think the dog you've been posting about is our Nabu. We lost him in a car accident on Highway 24. Is there any way you can confirm he's still there? We're prepared to drive out immediately if it's really him." Sarah, who had been tirelessly advocating for the beagle for weeks, was overjoyed at the prospect of a reunion. She promised to check on the dog first thing in the morning and get back to them as soon as possible. The Hammonds barely slept that night, their minds racing with the possibility that their beloved Nabu might still be alive. As dawn broke on December 19th, they received the confirmation they'd been hoping for. Sarah Johnson had seen the beagle, and he was still maintaining his vigil by the roadside. Without a moment's hesitation, the Hammond family piled into their car. The 4-hour drive from Denver back to the site of their accident felt like an eternity. They barely spoke, each lost in their own thoughts and prayers that this incredible story might have a happy ending. As they approached the familiar stretch of Highway 24, their hearts pounded in unison. Tom slowed the car, and they all peered intently out the windows. And then, they saw him, a small, scruffy figure sitting patiently by the damaged guardrail. Tom pulled the car over, and for a moment the family sat in stunned silence. It was Nabu. There was no doubt. But would he remember them after all this time? Jennifer was the first to open her door, stepping out slowly. "Nabu?" she called softly, her voice choked with emotion. The beagle's ears perked up at the sound of his name. He turned his head towards the car, his tail beginning to wag hesitantly. As the rest of the family emerged from the vehicle, Nabu's excitement grew. He began to bark, a joyful sound that echoed across the mountainside. In a burst of energy that belied his months of hardship, Nabu raced towards his family. He leaped into Jennifer's arms, his whole body wiggling with happiness as he showered her face with kisses. Tom, Emma, and Jack crowded around, all trying to pet and hug their long-lost pet at once. Tears flowed freely as the Hammonds celebrated this miraculous reunion. Nabu moved from one family member to another, whining with joy and making sure to give each of them a thorough greeting. Passing motorists slowed to watch the heartwarming scene, some even pulling over to offer their congratulations. Sarah Johnson, who had rushed to the site as soon as she heard the Hammonds were on their way, stood nearby, wiping tears from her eyes as she recorded the reunion on her phone. As the initial excitement began to subside, the Hammonds took a moment to truly look at Nabu. His once shiny coat was matted and dull, and he had lost weight during his months in the wild. But his eyes were bright, and his spirit was undiminished. He had survived against all odds, driven by loyalty and love for his family. Tom knelt down beside Nabu, gently examining him for any signs of injury. "You've been so brave, buddy," he murmured, scratching behind the beagle's ears. "But it's time to go home now."